Survivor 44, week 5. We are picking up from Sarah being voted out, the 4th woman voted out in a row. Four of the 4 people voted out actually in the game itself. We had 1 medical out and then 4 in a row of women. That has been the kind of like the big controversy of Survivor 44 so far. I did cover that last week as well. I think it's kind of funny. So right after Tribal, we always pick up with some sort of argument right after Tribal Council because there's always somebody burned after Tribal Council. And Yam Yam is like this big Yam Yam versus Carolyn thing, and he's basically mad that he was kind of left out of the vote this time around, and he was not too aware of Sarah's vote out. And that's kind of the big argument that kind of gets brought back up later as we get into the game, I guess you could say. But that is kind of like the first little beef that we start right after Tribal Council. And then we start off with some stories. We jump back into Gay Matthew on this season, where earlier in the season, I think it was like the first episode, where he was literally climbing this rock, and he was even the teaser for the season well before it came out, is that there's this guy is going to climb up on a rock and then fall off and, since like severely hurt himself in a way. He popped out his shoulder, he dislocated his shoulder, and he popped it back in, and obviously he's still not okay, he's still injured, but he's been going on since then, and that's kind of something that he brings back up now. He mentions to one of his tribe mates that he is in severe pain every morning, that it's still hurting, and we saw in a previous challenge where I don't know if it was last week, but he hurt his arm again in the challenge, and it is kind of interesting how much he's done since that injury and how many challenges he's attempted to do, and I have to applaud that. I think that's pretty incredible, especially with some of the how physical some of these challenges are, and the one he hurt it in is pretty physical. So that is definitely something that's happening for him right now. It is a thing very much affecting his game. So we jump to Straight Matt and Franny, and that's the whole relationship thing going on in this season, where there's like this on-island relationship. No idea if it goes off the show or I don't know what's going to happen with it. I don't really care. But it's one of the very cringe things to watch in this season for sure. I just have no desire to really care to see it. It is what it is, I guess. They spent a good few minutes on it again, just like some other things I don't really care about this episode. They just spent a few minutes on something that's so insignificant, and it just feels insignificant. Maybe it'll play a bigger part into how they play the game together. I don't know. But we do jump back to Tika, because Tika is a very big central focus of this episode, especially before the challenge, because they were the ones that last went to Tribal Council. So Yam Yam, he is continuously going on about, he's complaining to Josh and whatnot at Tribal Council about he's still very, very upset at how he's burned at Tribal Council, and that's kind of a thing going into this like divisiveness between Josh and Yam Yam, or Jam Jam, whatever his name is, and Carolyn. Is kind of like a tension between the last 3 remaining members of that tribe, and that is a thing that goes in later in the episode as well. But Josh also tells Yam Yam that he got an idol from Soka, but he, obviously when they pull them to the side and bring all the, they talk to them and stuff, he mentions that it is a fake idol. He made a fake idol, and he's telling Jam Jam that he has an idol, but he doesn't really have an idol. He's a fake one. So I did mention that Tika is getting the most of the screen time once again in this episode, and this is again before the challenge even begins. We get another one of these from, it's a very common thing these days, and so far, I mean, it's basically some of the most woke stuff we've gotten the last few seasons for sure, but it's still a common trend in Survivor these days. They have to have, because they have like 1 million gay people on this show now, it is what it is. Basically, if you put that on your application, you're almost guaranteed to get on Survivor at this point, it seems. But if you write down gay, you're on the show. That's how it goes. So we have Yam Yam and Josh. After their arguments and whatnot, and they mention the idol and everything, and they have to cut aside and have this whole entire 2-3 minute segment of just talking about how they have struggled in their lives and how brave and stunning they are about their coming out stories about being gay. And we have gotten this every time. It's like an every season thing now. We have to have 2 gay people sitting down on the beach and relating to each other about being gay, and that's it. They don't talk about anything else. They don't talk about like things in their lives or things they like to do, or they have to just relate to being gay, and that's just how it is. It's really I don't really care overall. Like, it doesn't really affect how the season goes overall for me. This is no big outbursts or anything like that, but it doesn't really matter, and it's getting kind of repetitive now. Like, we get it. You have a bunch of gay people on the show now, and you know what, I'm sure they're going to do it next season too, just to remind us that, hey, look, we have gay people now. Trust me, Survivor, we know. The challenge itself, when all the tribes get into the challenge, it's basically your normal looking setup for a challenge. They have 3 tribe members that are tied together, and they have to run through a course, hold a bucket of water, get it, then they have to get their puzzle done at the end, all that stuff. It's basically how the challenge goes. Is a big ball puzzle, like a maze at the end, and they have to have 2 players just kind of maneuver their ball through the maze and get 3 of them in a row to win the challenge. Obviously, we still have 3 tribes, so 2 tribes end up winning, and the 2 tribes that ended up winning are just like last week. Ratu and Soka win, so once again, they are not going to tribal council. This is always a very common thing with Survivor. You end up having one tribe that just kind of falls and falls again until the merge, and Tika seems to be that tribe. So Tika is once again going to tribal council. They are having to vote someone else out, and they're going down to 2 people after this. So that would make you assume that okay, that means people getting voted out now. We're getting close to this merge, and it's probably bound to happen after this tribal council. After the challenge itself, Jeff once again does this thing where he pulls 3 people aside to go on a journey again, and I just completely rolled my eyes when I heard him say, we just did this, we just gave out 3 immunity idols and just did the same thing. And luckily, it really wasn't much. They pulled Brandon, Danny, and Carolyn from each of their tribes to basically go on a journey once again. And you may think, okay, they're going to get some advantage or whatnot. This time around, they didn't do anything. They actually just had a little note on the thing saying, there is no advantage, there is no human idols, nothing like that. You're just going to go to this little area we have set up. We have a big meal for you, or just like a snack meal. And just going to let you guys talk, because you obviously from 3 different tribes, and just kind of get to know each other, relate to each other a little bit, and just kind of learn about the tribes. And I think it's kind of interesting. I think it's more interesting than them sending them off and giving them idols and crap like that. It is kind of interesting to see 3 different people from each tribe getting together before the merge and just kind of talking about how they could maybe play the game together and how their tribes are and everything like that. And I like that. But it ultimately just ends up becoming Brandon and Danny basically just chit-chatting back and forth, while Carolyn just kind of sits there and watches them just talk with each other the whole time. They kind of leave Carolyn out of the whole thing. So Brandon and Danny basically ignore Carolyn, and she very much mentions that, and that's a driving force into her decision for voting in tribal council, that she brings that up with her alliances and what she wants to do with voting in the tribal council. That's one of her big reasons. Is they mentioned that Josh is part of this bro alliance thing that Brandon and Danny want to set up or something like that, and she ultimately wants to target Josh after this. She comes back from this whole thing, and she wants to target Josh and get him out. Josh was also the one that was swapped onto their tribe to begin with, so he wasn't originally on there. So it kind of makes sense. He's always kind of been having this target on his back. So she goes to Yam Yam. So Carolyn and Yam Yam basically talk it out a little bit, and they start to realize Yam Yam has this decision either to join with Josh or join with Carolyn to vote out either Carolyn or Josh. It seems like that Yam Yam is the one that's kind of in charge in a way in this tribal council vote. And before that, Josh also pulls out his idol, his fake idol that he bragged to Yam Yam about earlier. And he's like, well, they wanted to see it, so he pulls it out, and immediately the idol falls apart, and they can tell that it's a fake idol. Josh is holding this fake idol made from Yam Yam notices it immediately. That's a fake idol made from the beads on the tree mail. He immediately notices that. And it also falls apart in his hands. And it's a very, very clear fake idol. It's not tricking anybody. Carolyn and Yam Yam both know now that this is not a real idol. It's very clearly not, and is a very poor and pathetic attempt by Josh for sure. So that is definitely something that doesn't look good for Josh, and that is something that Carolyn tries to use against Josh when she's talking with Yam Yam about getting him out. So Carolyn wants Josh out, and Josh, I think, wants Carolyn out. That's kind of how it is. So it's Carolyn or Josh. That's the big voting thing. Now let's go back a little bit. Before they even went off on their journey and whatnot, the 3 people went on their journey and they all went back to their tribes. They all left, but one person stayed behind, and that was Matthew, who had injured his arm. And that was obviously a going topic that we were probably going to touch back up on because it is like severely hurting him, and he mentions it lots of times. So he brings it up, and after the challenge is over, Jeff wants to talk to him with medical and everything like that, and talk to him about his game and how he's feeling with his arm, and mentioning that his arm is still hurting really, really badly. And they go on about how, like, this can, it could have been either a very insignificant injury, could have popped back in and out real quick, and the pain would have gone away very, very quickly, or he's having what he's having where the pain is staying around, and it was a bigger injury than they may have thought. So ultimately, this is something that changes the end of the episode, which kind of makes the end of the episode a little anticlimactic, and it just kind of ends, and that's it. So tribal council does not happen. Matthew, the gay Matthew, is the one getting voted out of this episode. Or not voted out, but he's getting taken out because of medical. So Jeff, they don't actually reveal when they're talking to him about it. They actually just have Jeff go to the beach at Tika, and he lets them all know that there will be no tribal council tonight. And Matthew is the one who went home because he has to deal with his arm and let his arm heal. So he is the one out of the game. So the only ones not voted out of the game so far are 2 men, and then there's 4 women voted out. So we've had 2 people voted out now, or 2 people out of the game now not voted out. So that's how Survivor 44 is going. Kind of sucks to see that happen. Maybe you shouldn't have climbed up on that rock for no reason whatsoever, but he does mention that in his little talk afterwards as well, that he probably shouldn't have climbed that rock at the beginning. But so Matthew is the one going home this week due to medical. So no tribal for Tika. I don't really know why. They've done tribals before with medical. They could have still done it and just kind of moved along the game a little quicker, I guess. But it is what it is. Tika didn't go to Tribal Council, and now we're going to have the merge next week, as we saw teased in the next week teaser. So it is what it is. Medical, it was kind of something they mentioned earlier on, that this is going to be a thing that happens quite a few times this season, especially like one of the first episodes, there was medical getting thrown around everywhere for tons of different things. So Survivor 44, week 5, pretty good episode, but it just ended really abruptly, and we didn't really get to see that cool tribal council. And I think that tribal council would have been pretty cool to see. That battle between Carolyn, Josh, and Yam Yam, I think it would have been very fascinating, because we were really leading into a very interesting tribal council, I would say. But now we're not really going to have another Tika tribal council. We are merged next episode. So it is what it is, but it was a good episode. Besides the ending, it just kind of just ended, and it was just kind of like, oh, it's over. All right. So on to week 6, and let's see how the merge goes.